All right. Welcome, Dr. Trina Reed, to the Fempreneur podcast. I'm so excited to get to know you better today. I was just saying to Trina offline before we hopped on that I haven't been for coffee with her before. So this is going to be very much like our first ever coffee date. We've hung out in a group that we're both a member of, but we've never hung out one-on-one. So everyone, you're coming along behind the scenes into our first ever coffee date where we get to know one another. So, Trina, introduce yourself and your business to us, please.
Hello, I'm Dr. Trina Reed. I'm a sexologist. I've been doing this for 25 years, and my specialty is to help women in long-term relationships thrive after the honeymoon stage is over. I'm not a therapist and I'm not a counselor. I'm an educator. So I do things like I have a YouTube channel and I write books and I write articles. So I'm more of a what I like to think of myself as a translator. So all this good research comes from the universities and I translate it for the average woman in the average relationship and how she can benefit from that research and, what she can do in her long-term relationship to keep the sparks and fire going. And, that's what I do.
That is an incredible job. I've never talked to anyone who has a business like yours. So I am so pumped to dig into this with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so take us back to the beginning phases of this business. When did you realize that you were being called to do this? And how did you kind of see those signs?
Well, when I went to university back in the dark ages, there was no such thing as a sexologist or, universities did not have this program. And it was always in my periphery, but, there was nothing available for me to, have that opportunity. And, so I thought about being a sex therapist, but it just didn't resonate. So I ended up getting two undergraduate degrees. One was in arts and one was in business. And I spent 10 years in the corporate world. And it just, it wasn't working for me. And just one day I was out on a dog walk with a super hot guy. But that's besides the point. And we were talking about sex as people do on dog walks. And he turned to me and he was a no nonsense guy. And he looked at me and he said, you really should be teaching this stuff. And I thought, you're right, I should be because I'm really good at it. And that was the turning point. And, I think when you're ready to step into what you're supposed to be doing, everything just falls into place. So, somehow magically I got into a graduate school that I really shouldn't have gotten into. I got a job to support myself that I really shouldn't have gotten because I had no experience being a corporate trainer, but I got this really great gig as a corporate trainer that allowed me to do my graduate studies. And, I just feel like there's been a lot of bumps and along the road, but I just know that when I stepped into this, it was meant to be because everything just fell into place, it's been a really great career for 25 years, but I got like a lot of, things you shouldn't be doing, a lot of things that I did wrong. Like the list of things that I've done wrong is, well, we could do this for an hour, but yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to get into some of those things you've done wrong and the lessons you've learned in a bit. But for now, I want you to grab that beautiful book beside you and put it in front of your face, kind of under your chin so we can see it. And tell us about this book. What is it? Who is it for? Why did you write it?
Well, this book is called The Sex Course. It's, I'm going to keep it. It's the first self-help fiction in the world that talks to women about sexuality in a interesting format. So I'm just going to put this back down. In 2008, I wrote a best-selling book called Till Sex Do Us Part. And I learned a lot of lessons from writing a best-selling book. And one of the lessons that I learned was that women don't want to read a self-help book on sex. So I came out with this program, like a life-changing program. It's a 5-step program that's easy to do. It's like very practical. It's very common sense. And I wanted to write about this program, but I didn't want to do it in a how-to format. So instead, I thought, you know what, I'm going to try it out in a fiction format. And it seems to resonate with a lot of women. This book, The Sex Course, won an award. There's the award. So this book won a couple awards. It's been number one. The reviews on it have been amazing. It's something to be very proud of. But I think it's more that I made sexuality accessible for the average woman. So this book talks about 4 women who take a sex course. The sex course is the actual 5-step program. And what's interesting is how each woman is so different, and how she internalizes the program is so different. But I based all 4 of these characters on, pretty typical standard women and their standard issues, So
Reed, we started the podcast interview. We got cut off. We're going to continue on with Trina's story about, basically you were telling us about how you got this business started, and then you were talking about your book. So jump back in wherever you want to, Trina.
Yeah, technology, isn't it fantastic? It really is. So I'm up here and you're down there, and we're able to manage to do this. So that's amazing. So yeah, I think there's the thing about writing a book is you have to be pretty sure about your subject matter and what you're doing, because it's a big project. This book, The Sex Course, it took me 3+ years to write. Mind you, that was during the pandemic, and there was time for me to learn how to write. But I know that you are, like, one of your specialties is book writing, and I can share what this like. So I have been writing nonfiction for over 20 years, and I'm really good at writing nonfiction. So switching over to a fiction was it uses the different part of your brain, right? So I had to completely relearn how to write, and it was a very interesting process. And it like a lot of times trying to meld this self-help with the fiction, it was really like trying to put a white puzzle together in a snowstorm. It was just so tough. Anyways, I feel like the results, the testimonials that I've gotten, the awards that it's received, that it's been worth it.
That's awesome. And you, do you use this book as a tool in your coaching? Like, how has this book helped you in just your day-to-day work in your business?
I would say that there's a whole, if you're into publishing, there's a whole learning curve to, having a book and selling the book. I don't do coaching, and I don't do therapy or counseling or anything like that. So this book really is a standalone, and now I'm learning to market this book to the masses. So, there's a big world out there with millions of women who will want to read this book. And it's my job now to understand how to get and brand and work and market this book out to the world, and it's a big undertaking.
Right. So the book is the magic, the book is the product, the book is the solution to this problem that you see out there with these women, and you're just really out there spreading the word about it and making sure it gets into as many women's hands as possible. Is that really the strategy and what you're up to these days?
So I wrote the workbook that goes along with this. So if you read this book and you like what it has to say, you can actually do the workbook as well. And I can reach down. If you want to see it, I can reach down. I want to see it. Okay. I don't know if I should. Oh, I think it's going to set everything off. Okay. So this is the workbook. So this is the workbook, and it's also award-winning. Nice. So this is also an award-winning book, and it's also a #1 workbook. So if you want, that was the strategy. Like, if you like this and you want to do it yourself, then you go to this workbook. And also the strategy is, this fiction is a 3-part series. So I'm just working on book #2. I'm also this. I also just, and this was quite the learning curve. So I turned both of these books into audiobooks. So this one is just coming. This one is just coming out. The audiobook is just coming out February 3rd. We had a multicast do the voicing for the book, and honestly, it's just wild to hear somebody voicing your book, especially when it got into the sex scenes. Like I said to the voice actors, I just want you to go for it. I just want you to go for the sex scenes because we're gonna be unafraid and unashamed, and we're just gonna do it. And they did it. Like they brought it home. I'm listening to it going, oh my God, it's just so awesome. And I had to learn how to do my own audiobook. So with nonfiction, you're supposed to voice your own. And this was a complete learning curve. Anyways, I feel like if you want to publish your own books, there's so many things to it, but there's also big learning curve. So this year, I will have published 5 books. And that's just from the last 5 years. So it's not like I just woke up in 2025 and had 5 books sitting on my shelf. Like this has been generating and working for the last few years to come up and create. So yeah, so having I guess to answer your very short question with a very long answer, I plan to have 8 to 10 books out in the next 3 years.
Nice.
Which is,
and you're kind of done with writing the self-help style. I remember we talked about this. You're like, they've got to be story-based. They've got to be almost feel like novels. Is that kind of the theme for the next book that's percolating?
So the 4 characters from this book, they go to the Taboo Sex Show. And so the Taboo Sex Show is actually a real show. It happens here in Calgary. It happens across Canada. And their adventures at the Taboo Sex Show. So I used to be a main stage speaker at the Taboo Show, and I had all these things happen to me at the Taboo Show, and and some of them are just unbelievable. Like you're like, no, that couldn't have happened. Well, it did happen. It happened to me. So, and the 3rd book has the 4 women going to a swingers club. Because I think women are, they're curious about swingers clubs. Every city has one, at least one, probably 2. Here in Calgary, there's, I think, 3. And, I feel like if more women understood what a swingers club was, that they might be more inclined to try it out. I don't know. I just feel like my writing is really starting to become, ordinary women having these adventures, these sex adventures. Yeah. Like I eventually want to write another fiction about women going to a hedonistic club, and what would that look like? Like it's something that we kind of think about in the back of our head, but we're like, could I, just the average person, go to a hedonism club in Jamaica where everybody's having sex on the beach and they're nude, and could I be that person? Yeah, you could be. It's not that big of a deal. If you went there, you'd be like, well, I belong here too. So
right. Yeah. And how do women find those opportunities, those events, those invites? How do they do it safely? So you're covering all of that in these next books, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, these women go in groups, like they're in a group of, so anyways, yeah. And I think that's a way more, for me anyways, that's a way more fun way to learn about sex than reading it in a how-to book.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No kidding. I agree. I mean, I don't know for sure because I haven't read your next books yet, but I agree with the philosophy. It sounds really interesting and a really engaging way to tell these stories and to bring these ideas, into a place where people could actually process whether or not it's for them, whether or not they even want to try it. Without having to actually try it, but reading your book first. So that's really, really awesome that you're doing this work, this really important work.
Yeah. And what I really like about the fiction is, like, when I'm writing a how-to, I'm a contrarian, and I'm always thinking, well, that wouldn't work that way. Like, I'm just thinking, well, what happens if so in my fiction books, I'm like, that's not going to work and that's not going to happen. And I'm being that contrarian. And I think it really gives the sense of validity to the self-discovery that women have in their sexuality, because I think we all are pushing up against this idea of we can be, that woman who's sexually free and leans into her sexuality and asks for what she wants. Like, that's somebody else. That's not who I am. So these books really put that to the test and really question that. And these women come out the other side seeing that, yeah, they are in fact that person, even though they didn't think they would be.
Right. Okay. So now let's talk to all fempreneurs, no matter what industry they're in, no matter what their business is. Let's put on Trina's business coach hat here and see what we can tease out of you regarding taking your idea and putting it out to the world and building bravery, building courage. What are some of those key things that you did in the beginning that were maybe really hard for you to do that were necessary to get this business off the ground?
So I'm going to give an analogy, and so stay with me. I'll keep it simple and short. When I was putting myself through grad school, being a corporate trainer, I worked a lot because they really liked me, and so meaning that I would do the same curriculum over and over again. So I was in 15 cities in 15 days, and I would be pretty much doing the same curriculum over and over, day after day after day. So the point is, I would just fine tune and tweak every single day. I would add something to the presentation. And, magically, after 4 or 5 years of doing this, I became an international award-winning speaker. But that's the end result. But the thing is, I feel like our businesses are similar, which is you have to start out with a really good product, whatever that product is. If you are a coach, then you have to have the best curriculum coaching program that you are able to make right now. And whatever, or if you are in a different industry, whatever that industry, create the best product that you possibly can. And then you just have to go to the basics. And I think this is the problem for a lot of entrepreneurs now, is they get the shiny syndrome. Like they see something shiny and they want to go to that. But being successful at business is really getting a really good product, finding where your audience is. And I think that's another place where women get discouraged, is they're throwing out the net, trying to cast it everywhere. They're on YouTube and they're on Instagram and they're on Blue Sky and they're like trying to be everywhere. You have to find the one place where people will pay attention to you. And once you find that place, you take your program and you keep tweaking it and keep tweaking it. So I think this is where a lot of entrepreneurs, but women, go wrong, is they get their program up. They're like, okay, you know what? My program is up. I've got my funnel set up. I've got my program. I'm good. I can walk away from it. But the truth of it is, you have to keep going back and redoing your funnel and redoing your program and tweaking. And the thing is, if you sit and you focus and you tweak and you stick to the basics, which is your metadata, which is your your audience, your target audience, you're always forever tweaking. At the end of 4 or 5 years, suddenly you have that business where you are the expert in the world, and I feel like if people just stuck to the basics, stayed there and just kept doing what, find the place where people are paying attention to you and just start diving down into that with your program and just redoing it a little bit better and redoing it. That's where you're going to have the success. But that's also where a lot of people get bored. And that's the problem. It's not.
That's the shiny syndrome thing you were talking about.
That's they're like, oh, and I could try this program and I could do this program. And that's diluting you. And so you've got to just have like laser focus. Like when people ask me like, why are you so good at what you do? Because when I choose to do something, I just put the blinders on and I'm just doing that thing, and I'm not letting other things distract me.
But you are tweaking, which is huge, because I literally
Like,
had the word tweak in my mind earlier because I was thinking about a particular fempreneur, and what I've noticed, she finally made the mindset shift because she was being very rigid in how she was putting herself out there. And she was very like kind of digging her heels in and saying, no, I'm not going to change my message. I'm not going to change anything about anything I'm doing. But yet she was complaining about the results that she wasn't getting. And I was like, just tweak it. You're not, revamping your whole message. You're not building a whole new website. I'm just inviting you to tweak things a little bit and keep tweaking and tweaking until you feel a shift and you see a change in the way the world is responding to you. And she finally started doing that, and it was really cool. And the word is so cool that you've been using the word tweaking, because that's been a huge word for me when I think of 2025. And what's worked for me in the past is exactly what you said, keeping the blinders on and avoiding the shiny syndrome while tweaking what you have. So yeah, it's been really, really
yeah, well,
huge.
I do understand. So, when now that my books are award winners, and I've gone through a year of having these books out in the world, and I'm trying to, like, I need to tweak them, and and the process of going back and redoing all the things. Like, I honestly, I did not understand. Like, I've got my book on hundreds of platforms, and all those platforms have to be switched. And the funnel that I have for my books and my free giveaways, like, all of that has to change. And uh, it can seem overwhelming, like that whole, oh my gosh, now I got to go back and tweak it and redo it. It seems overwhelming, and I understand why there might be resistance to it. But I just feel like, if if I if you want to increase your revenue, or if you want to increase your visibility, like, this is a necessary step, and you just have to bite the bullet and do it. See results.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. That's a great message, a great reminder for fempreneurs, especially at this time of year when we're looking at, we're looking back at the tweaks that maybe worked in 2024 that we didn't necessarily even realize had worked. And then looking ahead to 2025 and grabbing the tweaks that worked and putting those ones to work for 2025. So I hope that that's something that fempreneurs take away from everything that you're saying. And I also hope that you will share with us now a little bit about, you talked a bit about what's coming for you in 2025, but do you have any specific goals or events or ways that we can support you, or things coming up that we can sign up for? I know your business is very much focused on selling the books and getting the books into people's hands, but is there anything else that maybe you haven't mentioned yet that we don't know about?
Well, thank you for asking. That's really nice. Yeah, so I have a podcast. It's called the Sensational Sex Podcast. I co-host it with a woman from Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. And so our podcast is sponsored, and, we're in 2025, and we're, trying to get more sponsorship going. But also, we're always looking for ideas, but I feel like, we're at a, so there's three stages to any business, and you probably know this, Lindsay. So there's the getting the business started stage, there's the growth stage, and then there's the leveraging stage, right? So we spent most of 2024 getting our podcast up and going. So we spent a lot of time, like 6 or 7 months in the back end, getting our podcast up and ready. And like, you think, well, what does it take to do a podcast? You need a microphone and an internet connection. But if you want to do it right, you have to set it up properly. So now we've set it up properly. And in 2025, we're in the growth stage. And so now we're looking for sponsorships. I'm looking to major podcasting platforms like Audible, or the production companies that cherry pick those podcasts to be in their podcast house. I want to be that podcast. So that's where my focus is. This morning I just applied to have a podcasting award. And the thing is, nobody's going to nominate you for an award. So if you want an award, you have to you have to do it yourself. So this morning I submitted our podcast to an awards program to see if we can, have that award. So I feel like what I want from this podcast is to leverage our platform, but also, and to get the message out to women. But I also have, what I want to do is can I tell you what my new podcast idea is?
Yes.
Okay. So what I want this podcast to turn into is Amy, my co-host, and we go to different places and we try things out. So, in New York, you can go do a masturbation session. So women sit in a circle and they masturbate. And it's just like, the average woman would be like, that sounds crazy. I don't really, that's not for me, but I just feel like if Amy and I went and did this, it would show that, two moms are sitting in this masturbation circle and we're doing it. And you can too, there's all these things that are around North America that are so interesting that would help women's sexuality. And I feel like if Amy and I tried these things, like if we podcasted them, I think it would be hysterical. But I also think it would help women see, you know what? Maybe I will go to New York and maybe I will try this. Maybe that would open up my sensuality and sexuality and my empowerment, because, but so that's what I'd like to do with this podcast, which is also a very long answer to your very short question.
Well, that's great, though. I love that you have this idea for a podcast where you're recording like real and raw content about an actual event that other people can go and partake in. That's really, really cool. I think that's a fantastic idea, and I hope you do it.
I know. I hope so too. I think we'd have to have like major sponsors or like some kind of podcast house or like Audible. They'd have, this kind of podcast is the next level, which, like in the 3 levels of, that's where we're in the growth stage. Next stage would be to leverage it and get that next podcast.
Right. Okay, now I'd like you to put on your sexologist hat here while we get closer to wrapping things up and talk to women about the number one mistake that most women in long-term relationships are making when it comes to sex.
Okay, first, I'm sorry, I don't want to correct you. It's not a mistake. It's not a mistake. It's just, so it's not a mistake women are making. It's just, we don't know any better. So, society has told us that we have to be a certain way. And, most of us are just doing our best to do our best. But I would say if there were 2 things that women could look at to improve her sex life, it would be, number 1, asking for the sex she wants. So the majority of women in long-term relationships, they go along with what their partner wants to do. And generally what their partner wants to do, generally it's a man. So generally what their partner wants to do is have orgasm-focused sex. And so the whole idea of she comes first, orgasm-focused sex has really set the majority of women up for failure. So, women have one shot at the beginning of sex to get her pleasure in. And most women experience what's called a delayed sexual response. So the longer you've been in a relationship with somebody, the longer your delayed response to getting into the sex takes. So, if she comes first, you've got one chance, you've got like 5 minutes to get the orgasm in. And if you don't, it's on to your partner. And so I feel like if women could just take a step back, take orgasm off the table, not that you don't want to orgasm, of course you want to orgasm, but just take it off the table and say, okay, what do I need in that first 5-10 minutes to make this better for me? Suddenly you've turned the sexual experience around for you. The second thing I would recommend to women is to really learn how to lean into your pleasure. So, unfortunately, the messaging that we've received since we've been born is shame based and guilt based. So, women have an inability to lean into the pleasure that her body can give to her because we've got all these messages in our head. And it is absolutely learnable and doable. It just takes a conscious effort to say, you know what, when my partner touches me here, I really like that. And instead of women, I feel like, especially in a long term relationship, when their partner starts touching them, they freeze up. Like their body just completely freezes up and they're like, and it's it's really just when you feel yourself freezing up, tell yourself, okay, just relax. And I'm going to look for one thing that my partner does that felt good to me. And when you start looking for the things that your partner is doing, or maybe you really like touching your partner. I know many women just like the whole like squeezing their, like that's their thing. And if that's what you like, then you just do that and you pay attention to what you enjoy. And if you start building onto that, suddenly your body's going to be a lot more open. And the thing is, when you start leaning into your pleasure, that whole delayed sexual response that we just talked about shortens because your body is aware and awake and able to start taking in the pleasure a lot sooner. I can keep
Okay.
going. I can go on for hours, but that's my two things.
Yeah, those are really powerful things. And I feel like leaving it there is a great move because those are two really, really powerful things. Like those things, I've heard you talk about the first one before, but the second one, I haven't heard you say it quite like that before. And that's really cool. I love that. It's such a tangible, simple thing to do. Yet, like you said, it's going to open you up so much. And it gives you just that mindset shift of looking for the good and then
Mm-hmm.
actually multiplying the good, which is just like
Yeah.
simple yet completely game changing. So that's awesome.
Yeah, well, my whole philosophy is you have to have a positive sexual mindset. And what that means is you look for what's going right as opposed to what's going wrong with your sex. You know, and as you say, it's a shift. And if you start seeing and feeling what is going right with your sex life, it's so easy to walk into the sexual experience with a positive sexual mindset. Unfortunately, the majority of women have a negative sexual mindset walking in, right? So, it's just about shifting it and my 5-step book can show you how to do that. So,
Yes, yes. We will
yeah.
link to the book in the show notes. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us, Dr. Trina Reed. It's been truly a pleasure getting to know you better. I learned a lot about you today, and I really appreciate this. I also appreciate you for writing books on such a touchy subject, on something that most people don't even have the courage to talk about, let alone writing entire books about, and for bravely sharing with us some of your future goals and plans. That was really cool to hear about the other stuff that you're cooking up. I'm so excited for all of it. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
have
like
started reading your book, so I'm excited to finish reading it
yeah.
here while I'm in Mexico.
Well, you know what? I sincerely appreciate that we could just talk about sex unabashedly. And thank you for that opportunity. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and this has been such a unique episode in that we talked about business, we got in there and talked about marketing and business growth, and then we talked about sex. Like that was
Yeah.
just such a fantastic episode. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. And I've gotten to know your business partner and podcast co host, Amy. She's fantastic. I look forward to digging into some of your podcast episodes in the near future. I'll link to the podcast as well in the show notes. And really, other than that, I just want to thank everyone for tuning into the Fempreneur podcast and let everyone know that my next Fempreneur marketing school starts up first week of February. So check that out. There's only 6 spots in each group, and there's only 3 left in this next group. In the marketing school, you're going to hang out with me and other Fempreneurs for 3 months. You're going to learn all of my marketing shortcuts, and we're going to do a little bit of one-on-one coaching to dive into your specific business, as well as you're going to get to learn from other Fempreneurs. who are actually taking these really essential marketing steps. So check that out at yycfempreneurs.com. The link is in the show notes. Thank you, Dr. Trina Reed. We'll see everyone again soon, and we'll hop off for now. Bye, everybody.
Bye.